Hi, I'm Neil Smith, and this is Sundays in the Workshop with Dad. Jeremiah steadied the nail between thumb and finger, swore under his breath he wouldn't screw up this time, set the hammer on top, a couple of practice arcs. He held his tongue right. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. It sank right in. Like that, Dad? Chet took a moment to regain his composure. Yeah, son. You got it. The nail had driven through Chet's kneecap, his patella, splitting it in two. Not cleanly, bone shards and splinters around the wound, but the sound of the cracking bone was loud enough for both to hear. Sunday evening, in Chet's workshop out in the yard, where he had built the kitchen table and chairs, the coffee table, the TV hutch, and a corner case to display Magnolia's treasured tea sets. It had become a tradition, bringing his son out here to teach him about working with tools, helping him with his crafts. He had made a skateboard and also a birdhouse. This evening, on Jeremiah's first attempt, he'd flinched and slammed into the meat of Chet's thigh. It was pathetic. Second attempt, the nail pierced the skin but skittered off the bone and lodged in the tendon. The boy was getting discouraged. "Fuck!" he'd yelled, pacing the garage, pounding his head on both sides with both latex fists. So stupid. Jerry, hey, calm down. Calm down. You hear me? Take a few deep breaths and listen. Chet explained you don't have to wail on the nail in one go. As long as the first hit was solid, confident enough, the nail would penetrate and take hold, and the next two would drive it in. Jeremiah followed his dad's advice, and there it was, a ruined knee. It's a proud moment for Chet. His son, only 16, shaggy-haired, in a hoodie and an Attack on Titan anime tee, was taking initiative. Once this was all over, the boy would be okay by himself out in the world, without his parents. It was all going to come down to this. But Chet hadn't known the day, nor the hour, he would wake up and find his wife Magnolia stabbed, what must have been 100 times in a running shower, a la Psycho, which Chet first showed Jerry when he was, 11. He'd walk down the hall to his stepdaughter's room, Jerry's older half-sister, home for the weekend from college. Knocked, of course. He'd always knocked. With no answer, he'd tried the knob and found Colleen mutilated, as only a psychopathic 16-year-old boy could. Nothing left to the imagination. A hat tip to one of the original serial killers Chet had introduced to his boy in his impressionable years, Jack the Ripper. He had had no time to grieve, no time to admire the skill of Jerry's recreation. Exactly like the photo. Chet had to admit he had often imagined what Colleen's insides were like, her heart in his hand. But he had rules, mental blocks, self-hypnosis. Whatever he had taken to shut down the worm in his brain, threatening to knock out the whole house of cards, Jerry didn't have the same stakes at play. He was as free as Chet used to be before Iraq. No time, because the sound of the baseball bat whooshing behind impact knocked Chet to the ground. Before he could make sense of it and get to his feet, someone wrenched his jaw open and poured a sickly sweet juice down his throat. It was either swallow or choke. Ketamine, Chet thought. Excellent choice. He woke in the workshop, fastened to a lawn chair. Jerry made quick work of the other knee, beautifully. Chet took in the kid's smell as he knelt before the chair he'd been zip-tied to and duct-taped to, chained to the riding lawnmower in case Chet thought about making a run for it. It had crossed his mind, as Jerry expected it to, but what kind of father, mentor, would Chet be if he had bolted? He kept his seat and shut his mouth. Weird. Something he'd never thought about before becoming a stepfather, then a father, was how the kids in a father's life, the ones he'd sworn to protect, each have a different smell. Some sort of primal instinct switching on the moment Jerry was born, or the day of his wedding to Magnolia, Colleen a first grader then. How to explain? The boy is like a snow day here in North Minnesota. His sister's like a cinnamon raisin oatmeal. Nothing like the fierce sweat of the prisoners he had interrogated in those desert black sites. The piss and shit fumes, bolder every day the subject was left bound and gagged, assaulted by death metal music, doused with freezing and scalding water, told repeatedly his wife and children and mother had been raped and murdered already, and much more. Chet was on the verge of passing out when Jerry took a pair of massive garden shears and sliced off 3 fingers on his dad's right hand. It took 4 tries. The blades weren't sharp enough. Listen, Jeremiah, listen to me. I know you've put a lot of faith in me not to scream. It's a big risk. It's a real big risk. The boy scrunched his eyebrows. Chet looked down at his index finger dangling. He didn't realize Jerry had snipped that one too. You think? I am not the same man I was in the Army. I'm older, softer. My will is weaker. If I were you, I'd slap some tape over my mouth. You know how nosy the neighbors are. But Pop, I mean, how will you talk to me then? Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Breathing hard. You're Jerry. You're doing great, son. Really great. One thing. Make sure your tools are sharp. As sharp as can be. Sometimes your goal isn't to just inflict pain, but to induce shock. Try to imagine it from their point of view. Seeing their fingers gone, the pain not yet reaching their brain. You see what I mean? Okay, I get it. Yeah. Good. Let's try it again with my other hand. Go get the whetstone and oil. You still want the duct tape? We'll play it by ear, how about? Jerry grinned and set off to sharpen the shears. Chet watched warmly, remembering his first clues to Jerry's utter lack of empathy when he was a young boy caught torturing the dog with a stun gun he'd taken from his mom's purse. Then the neighbors' cats, one by one, disappeared. The couple next door, Neil and Fran, called a meeting for everyone on the street, goaded everyone into starting a neighborhood watch. It's great, just what Chet needed. Amateurs with flashlights and handguns peeking into his backyard all hours of the night. He didn't even like cats. A couple days after, Chet found Jerry behind the workshop with the same sort of set of shears he was using this evening. A gray cat bleeding out. 3 legs already amputated. When his dad shouted, Jerry looked up, his eyes flat and dead. Go to your room. But Pop, now. Jerry set the shears down carefully. He had dumped the exhausted, mewling cat like it was garbage. He moped across the yard, as if daring Chet to shout at him again. Once he was inside, his father disposed of the cat quickly, humanely. He had found Jeremiah in his room smashing the robot insect toys he'd begged for last Christmas. He was lining up sharp pieces of plastic on his study desk, saving them for who knew. Chet watched from the doorway for a while, remembering Magnolia's whispered fear, "Jerry's not normal." The robotic way he spoke to her and his sister. Creepy. Or Colleen's fear at being asked to babysit her brother when she was old enough, and no amount of money changed her mind. Was it genetic? Had he passed along his own sickness, evil incarnate and etched into his DNA? He was certain as he could, that Jerry hadn't found his hidden stash of souvenirs from the war, or the other stash from when he'd returned home, unable to power down the itch. "Jer, I want to show you something. Come on." It was the right time. Either show him, or let him keep wreaking havoc throughout the neighborhood, his school, and heaven forbid, his own family. Chet had taken Jeremiah out to this very workshop, sat him down, and pulled out the first picture album, the pages sticky, discolored. Or the smell Polaroids get over the years. He handed the book to Jeremiah and said, "Open it." Starting with page 1, it was full of photos from his time in Iraq. Him and his partner, his blood brother really, Rod Grood. Together, they had broken hundreds of men, dozens of women, and even several children. Terrorists, every one of them. They all confessed, even if it took their dying breaths to do it. That was the problem. They'd say anything, guilty or not, if Chet and Rod would, for the love of God, please stop. And by the time the torture twins figured this out, it was too late. They were hooked. They made their questions confusing, contradictory, surreal, ridiculous enough their subject wouldn't even know what he was supposedly guilty of. Jeremiah flipped pages with wide eyes. Before and after. It was my job, son, to keep this country safe by making these sons of bitches own up to their plans for America. Wait, see, we called him Steel Nips because we thought for sure a battery and some clamps was all it would take to break him. Jesus, he was a tough nut. Flip the page. See, it took a lot more. Waterboarding a man whose nose would cut off. He sighed. Sweet memories. More and more pages, Chet told Jeremiah how he had started much like him, a young guy fascinated with making animals hurt, wondering what they looked like inside, wondering if their fear was reflex based on pain alone, or mental, like terror, like the sublime. When Chet's daddy, rest his rotten soul, caught Chet dismembering a rabbit alive, he whooped the fear of the devil into his son's ass, sent him off to the shrinks, forced him into an alternative school where he learned from the other students better ways to not get caught. Still, he got caught again. They caught him with his unconscious prom date. The cops thought they were saving her from date rape. If they only knew. Chet finished his GED in prison, then finished his time with good behavior, then found a buddy from alternative school to help him score perfect forgeries. He changed his name and attempted to blend into the background. It was only one day after 9/11 the Army came calling, knocked on his door. They'd seen right through the phony name and whatnot and had been keeping a close eye on him. They needed a man like Chet, quite a few men like Chet, to keep our country strong. Was he willing? If so, he'd be rewarded handsomely. To be honest, Chet would have done it for free. Jeremiah kept flipping, the ferocity of the torture rising with each new victim, the posing of the bodies, the smiles on the faces of whichever one was crouching next to the dead El Queso, their little twist on Al-Qaeda. I was in the desert for 6 years, 6 wonderful years. Then one day they said our jobs were done and we were flown home to the States with a bonus and a gag order on ever telling anyone, wife, parent, child, or pet, what we had done for the war. Jeremiah, only 9 at this time, had peered up, those beady little dead eyes of his. How did it feel? Oh, coming home? No, interrogating them. Interrogating, you mean, interrogating. Well, the cries, the begging, those moments he could tell his subject had given up on their will to live. I bet it feels close to what you feel killing a cat. I wasn't going to kill it. Son, please, lie to your mother, not to me. You've killed a lot of cats in this neighborhood. No more, though. I'm going to teach you how to make it work, how to grow into what you're becoming. And he didn't mean like some Dexter bullshit, or the father told his psychopathic son to only kill bad people. What a joke. Like having Wonder Bread and water for the rest of your dinners. Once Chet was married and became Colleen's stepfather, he really tried very hard to keep the itch deep and hidden away. The good old days to reminisce about on long winter nights. He bought a snowblower. He put up Christmas lights. He raked leaves. He bought a grill and made some excellent steaks and pork chops. He subscribed to Netflix and binged a lot of series on the couch each night with Magnolia. Pretended he hated Colleen's high school boyfriend. But his fucking itch. Then Jerry was born, and with him came the sleepless nights, the exhaustion, the complete focus on making sure this tiny, fragile life was set for the long run. But his fucking itch. Chet couldn't stand it. He scratched. Damn right he scratched. He took the hunt out of town, obviously. Shit where you eat, especially in this neighborhood, you might find Neil or Fran peeking out of their curtains, absolutely sure you were up to some sort of naughtiness. Instead, he hunted in Duluth, an hour to the east. He hunted downtown, the lake walk, the mall, the subdivisions on top of the hill. He wanted someone who wouldn't be missed for a while. Single, young, didn't call mom enough. Found him in Ian, a college student, B- average. No girl or boy friend, known to stay out all hours. He kept to himself. Chet discovered all these things by bumming a cigarette and trying some cold reading to dig out the details. Then he offered him a ride. What line had he used? Like, dude, if you like manga, you ought to see my collection. Of course, there was no collection. Once in the workshop, Chet forced the gas on him, nitrous, until he was a rag doll. Not much time. He was worried Magnolia might wake and come check on him. Not likely with the dose he gave her. Or Neil would butt his nosy ass into it. I swear the guy thought he was Columbo. Chet got him on the workbench and took him apart. It wasn't as thrilling as the fear and screams of the terrorists, the God's wrath punishments he and Groot devised. It was fine. It calmed the itch. Several hours later, he hauled Ian's many pieces in trash bags amongst sawdust, wood scraps, used sandpaper, and varnish-stained paper towels over to the North Shore and sank those bags to the bottom of Lake Superior. It's as good as a bottomless pit. He was home well before the roofies wore off his wife and kids. Before sunrise, he was beat and fell into a dreamy sleep. He had dropped 10 more bodies into Superior since then. Jerry had helped with the last 3. It started by teaching the boy to use tools for woodworking, how to make something beautiful from dead trees: saw, lathe, hammer, sander, screwdriver, varnish, glue, many more. He showed Jerry his more recent photo album, the people from Duluth, Two Harbors, Hermantown, quietly dismembered in Chet's workshop, then sunk into the dark, freezing waters of Gitchigumi. Birdhouse, skateboard, coat hooks for the mudroom, plant stand. Chet took Jeremiah on a drive to Duluth, explained, "You can't pick someone you have a connection to. You don't choose the same type of person, the same appearance, or they'll put it together. Think strategically." He chose a frumpy older woman, maybe reminded him of a teacher. Chet asked why, and Jerry shrugged. "What's old blood like?" Jerry played lost and asked her to help him find his dad's truck in the parking lot. After her, a man who drove a Porsche SUV. Both agreed anyone driving that abomination deserved what they got. The last was a girl Jerry's age. Chet told him it was a bad idea and would draw too much attention. Then the look he gave Chet, shudder. "I'm curious." "Okay, son, okay." Shh. Chet whipped his head towards the sound. Jerry coming back, working the blades, now sharpened to a serious edge. "Shh. Shh. Better pop." "Sounds sharp." Chet was weaker by the minute. You make sure to take care of the details, Dot the, cross the, Are you ready? Jerry stepped to Chet's left side, widened the shears around his left-hand fingers. Chet shook his head. "I need a minute, son." "Oh, come on." "I said in a minute." It was too loud. Jerry should have taped his mouth closed. For the first time since it began, Chet wondered if he had a chance to make it out alive. He wondered how many of his subjects, from Iraq to the Minnesota Northwoods, wondered the same thing. Was there any answer they could give, any pleading or begging strong enough to get under their tormentor's skin? Right? No one was that cruel or that cold, right? Well, Chet knew better. He wondered what would come next. Inject his eyeballs with bleach, force him to drink rat poison, drive an ice pick into his ear not quite far enough to kill him. The nitrous had made it all safer for his own itch, yet Chet could tell it hadn't been enough for Jerry. Like he had with the cats, the kid needed to see and hear the pain, like his old man had overseas. It added something special. It made the whole exercise meaningful. Jerry had slacked off, his demeanor shy, small, still enthralled to his father. That's not the lesson Chet wanted to impart. "Son, come here." Jerry stepped closer. Chet stared him dead in the eye. Are you going to let your subject push you around and take control? I asked for a minute. You shouldn't give me 10 seconds. Understand? A grin on the boy's face. Yeah, I get it. Thanks, Pop. He opened the shears and positioned them for the left-hand fingers again, sharp enough to take them off in one shh. Then there was a shout from outside. Mother shit! It was a flash, a bang. Jerry stood tall, with his eyes wide like he'd been prodded with a cattle rod. Another 2 flash bangs, and his head recoiled, the last expression on his face questioning his dad. What happened? Jerry dropped like a stone. A heavy bag tossed right into Lake Superior, sinking down, down, down. In the doorway of the workshop stood Neil, two-handing a smoking pistol. His gaze switched from Cherry to Jet, taking in his bruises, lumps, nailed knees, and fingers all over the floor. Jesus, my God, man, what was he trying to do? Chet's heart broke, and he strained at the zip ties. Why did you do that? Neil, why did you have to kill him? Why did you kill my son? Neil eased the pistol down. You're good now. You're good. I'll call someone. I'll get you some help. He hefted his phone, dialed, spoke to the dispatcher over the speaker instead of holding it to his ear. Chet stared at Jeremiah's body, the smell of a snow day already fading. So much blood leaking out of the wounds on his back and head. How he would have loved the sight. It was truly beautiful. Why? Neil held up a finger. Now the address. The address is... And Chet was itching all over now. He'd failed his son, miserably so. It should be Chet dead on the floor. It should be Chet's blood spreading out, reflecting the blinking fluorescence. Chet peered at his neighbor, strutting around telling the dispatcher his half-assed version of events. He's lucky I heard him shout. That kid was about to chop his other fingers off. His own dad. Blue light strobed outside, the siren coming to a stop in the alley behind the house. Chet had no other choice but to play the victim, the real victim, and hope they didn't find his hidden places. Another glance at the floor. Jerry's blood had made it to his slippers, absorbed into the fabric. That should be Neil's blood, Chet thought. And it will be soon enough.